Would you lend out your Bitcoin?
No, I would never lend out my Bitcoin, and I would never advise anyone else to lend out their Bitcoin. That is the biggest problem in the marketplace. That's so fiat. That's a fiat mindset that you're going to lend out your Bitcoin to earn Bitcoin. Break that mindset. Take everything you've learned in school. I learned all the traditional finance stuff in college. I burnt those books in my fire pit with my kids so that they wouldn't be brainwashed by it. This is some serious stuff that people have to swallow. The fact of the matter is that Bitcoin, how do I say this? Let me make sure I say this the right way. This is a sour subject, right? Because you get a lot of these central bankers, a lot of these Wall Street bros that come over and they're like, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do this. You know, you saw Celsius and BlockFi and Voyager, and they thought they were going to rule the world, but they brought these fiat mindsets into the crypto economy. So they brought the bailout mindset into crypto, where there is no bailout, there is no mercy, and you saw what happened. They got destroyed. So what needs to happen is people need to understand you will borrow against your Bitcoin. That's how it empowers you. You don't lend it out to earn interest. There's no need to. You borrow against it. And when you borrow against it, the equity value, we go back to the example I gave you with El Salvador. The asset side of your balance sheet is increasing while the liability side of your balance sheet it stays the same. So therefore the burden of your liabilities will shrink over time because the asset side of your balance sheet is increasing. So let's say you have like Bitcoin right now is at was it $70,000 or so. So let's just call it $100,000 for sake of math. So you put up one Bitcoin as collateral. You are not lending your Bitcoin to somebody else. That is a bad idea. That is fiat. What you're doing is you're lending to yourself. You're borrowing from your Bitcoin to yourself. So you put up one Bitcoin for $100,000. You borrow $40,000 against it. Here's the risk. If the price goes from 100,000 down to like 42,000, you're going to get liquidated. You're going to lose your Bitcoin. That's a potential thing. But we have to look at this from the borrower side and from the lender side. That's what people forget. They always think about the borrowers because most people are borrowers and very few people are lenders. But from the lender side, when someone posts that Bitcoin collateral, it's an over collateralized loan. And what that means is that there's no default risk. So it's not based on my promise, right? If I posted one Bitcoin collateral with you and then you lent me $40,000, if I walked away from you and never came back, you wouldn't care. You wouldn't care at all because you hold that one Bitcoin as collateral. And if the terms of our contract expire, I think they'll end up being perpetual. But let's just say it did expire. What you would do is you would sell that if I never came back to pay you back the 40,000 plus interest, you would sell the 40,000 plus interest from the Bitcoin. And then when I did come back to you, the remainder of my Bitcoin would be sitting in my account. And there was no risk to the lender because it was an over collateralized loan. Now let's go back to the borrower side. And I wanted to interject the lender side because it's important for people to understand right now from the lender side, what they consider the most pristine form of collateral is U.S. Treasuries. And you know, U.S. Treasuries have worked fantastic and they solved the problems that gold had. Gold was too expensive to secure and to transport and to settle. It didn't make sense to settle gold. Sometimes you would pay more to transport the gold to settle than you would in interest against the loan. So it doesn't make sense. Gold didn't work as a base layer money that could be used as collateral within a financial system. So they fixed that problem with U.S. Treasuries. But the assumption that they made was that the expansion of supply of those treasuries would never be a problem. That's where treasuries are failing now. So treasuries are fantastic because you can settle treasuries cheaply, securely, and easily. But there's a problem. We lost the hardness of the gold collateral, right? Gold was so good because you couldn't expand it. Well, look what the governments are doing to expand treasury debt all over the world. It's too soft. So Bitcoin comes in and it's a hybrid. You get the best of gold and you get the best of U.S. Treasuries. Bitcoin is that engineered money that that can do what gold and US treasuries could never do, deliver you the hardness, but also the fast, cheap, and easy and secure settlement. Now we come back to the borrower. The borrower, why would I want to borrow $40,000 against my $100,000 of Bitcoin? Well, because the risk that you're taking, like we talked about, was the liquidation risk. But let's just say things become more steady and we're starting to move up the S curve. And, these 60, 70% downturns now turn into 30 and 40% downturns, right? So at a 40% LTV, you got 60% of wiggle room. Plus, you can actually deposit more margin if you wanted to take the additional risk of losing more Bitcoin. But what comes to fact is that you borrowed 40 grand, and let's say you borrowed 40,000 at 5%. Well, the rate of inflation is 10%, and the compounding annual growth rate of Bitcoin over the last 10 years is 60%. So let's just cut that in half and say that it's only 30% CAGR. Well, you got 30% CAGR working for you on the upside, and you only have a 5% liability working for you on the downside. That's called a self-repaying loan. Bitcoin will enable self-repaying loans, and people just haven't discovered it yet because they're still trying to figure out, how can we lend out our Bitcoin and make money? You don't lend out your Bitcoin to make money. You borrow against your Bitcoin to make money. That's the big thing. That's the light bulb that has to go off. And I think there's a couple of people working on that, but me personally at People's Reserve, we've been stealth building for 2 years, and one of our mainstream products is a self-repaying mortgage powered by Bitcoin. And it embraces the new mindset of Bitcoin as pristine collateral that empowers you as the borrower and reduces risk to the lender. It's a hybrid model that I think is going to take the world by storm.